Hello, welcome to the River Discovery Center. We're very glad to have you here today. Our center is all about the river. We like to say we celebrate our nation's rivers here at the River Discovery Center. If the name sounds a little different from what you've heard in the past, that is because we have just recently changed our name. We were formerly the River Heritage Museum, and early in this year we decided to change our name because we think River Discovery Center more accurately describes what we do here. I'd like to start off by telling you a little bit about our historic building. One of the first things people notice when they come to the museum is our beautiful building. The outside is a red two-story brick federal-style building, and it is Paducah's oldest standing building downtown. It was built in 1843, and it was originally a branch of the Bank of Louisville. And something that was unique about that period of time was the banker lived here in our bank building. That was pretty common in the 1800s. People often lived above their place of business. So our banker was named Adam Rankin, and he lived here with his wife and two sons. And Adam was here for several years. It was a bank for about 30 years. It closed due to the economic instability left after the Civil War. And after our building was a bank, it became a hotel for several different owners. And then it became Petter's Supply. And those of you who are from Paducah probably remember the building when it was Petter's Supply. It looks a little different now. It did go through a major renovation after the city purchased it in 1996. Another interesting fact about this building is that it was Paducah's first Episcopal church building. Adam Rankin was of the Episcopal faith, and he started church meetings here sometime near that 1843 period that the building was first built. I'd like to start taking you through the interactive exhibits now, so please follow me. We're now at the beginning of our interactive exhibits. We're in the part of the museum that talks about the different boats that have been on our rivers for the last 400 years. You'll notice a number of matted images behind me that tell the story of all the boats that have been on our rivers. These images actually start with the small boats that came to our area to bring explorers here to see what kind of country was here. And then a lot of our images show the steamboats that were on the river. The first steamboat came on the river in 1811, and that steamboat came down from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we know that the steamboat era lasted approximately 100 years, and there were as many as 8,000 boats on our rivers during the steamboat era. I have a model here in the back that is an example of a packet steamboat. This was a very important steamboat, as the packet boat could transport all kinds of cargo. It could transport the typical cargo, cotton, peanuts, that sort of thing. Also, people could travel on it. And if you'll notice down on the first deck, there are little stalls that allowed the packet boat to also transport animals. The packet boats were often the way that the new settlers could add animals to their farms. They could get on the packet boat and travel up to Cincinnati and get some horses or cows or pigs and bring them back to their farms. In addition to the steamboat models, we also have many towboat models in the museum. This is an example of a towboat that's working as we speak. This is the Ray A. Eckstein. And here at the River Discovery Center, we want you to learn about our towboat industry. We want you to know the importance of the towboat industry to the economy of our nation, and we do strive very hard to give you lots of information about towboats. If you'll follow me, we're going to step across now and look at original part of the building called the root cellar. Follow me, please. I now would like to show you the root cellar. This is an important area to our building because historically it's part of the original part of the building, 1843, and it's a type of structure that was often included in a building from the 1800s. It's called a root cellar, and it was an area that was used for storage of fruits and vegetables. It was an area that would stay cool and dry, and so Mrs. Rankin, the banker's wife, perhaps stored some of her apples or potatoes down in this area, and then in January she could have pulled out some fresh food for her family. This was going to be the elevator shaft, but when Ray Black and Sons, who were doing our renovation, discovered these large bricks, they knew that this part of the building was important and part of that original structure. Those bricks weigh 17 pounds each, and Bill Black knew just by the sheer size of them that this building predated the Civil War. You'll see in the cases some of the artifacts that were brought up from the dirt area here in the root cellar. These are not important monetarily, but they are important artifacts because they tell the story of our building for the last 150 years. You'll see bits and pieces of medicine bottles, old pottery. There's even a square nail here in the case on the right. The square nail was used to construct this building. An important find that we got very excited about here in this building was a button from a Civil War soldier's uniform. And that was an important find for us because we knew that the Civil War was going on right outside our building in the 1800s when the Rankin family lived here. And to find a button here in our root cellar indicates to us we had a soldier in our building. And that brings about the question of what was the soldier doing? Well, we actually have a friend of the museum who's written several books on the Civil War, and he has told us that it was not uncommon whenever General Grant took control of a city for him to let his officers stay in private homes. And remember, this was a private home in addition to being the Bank of Louisville. So perhaps one of Grant's officers stayed here as a perk. It would have been a very beautiful building with a great view of the river. We're now standing at one of the audio stations in the museum. We have a number of audio stations throughout our exhibit area. You can push buttons and you can hear examples of river music, perhaps a narration about a famous river person. This is one of my favorites and I wanted to show it to you. This audio station plays a sample of roustabout music. It plays a song called the John Gilbert. John Gilbert was the name of a paddle wheel, and this was a song that the roustabouts wrote about working on the John Gilbert. The roustabouts were the men who worked on the steamboats doing all the heavy labor. They carried the fuel to the engine room and they put all the cargo on the boat as well as took all the cargo off the boat on their backs. It was a very difficult life. These men worked very hard, and to sort of ease the pain of their everyday labors, they developed a type of music called roustabout music. This particular piece tells about the John Gilbert, and it gives us very important information. We're very happy to have this. Actually, a lot of people don't even know that the roustabout music has been preserved. We're very lucky here in Paducah, Kentucky to have family members from Miss Mary Wheeler's family. Miss Mary Wheeler is the person responsible for having documented so much of the roustabout music. She was a music historian, sort of a lady ahead of her times, and she came to Paducah and studied the roustabout music. She interviewed the old gentlemen, talked to them about their lives as roustabouts. She learned their lyrics, she learned their tunes, and she saved all of this information for us. I'm going to activate the button in just a moment, and I think you'll be able to understand why it's important that we have preserved this. This particular song will tell us the names of the crew members of the John Gilbert. It'll tell us what kind of cargo the John Gilbert transported, and it just gives us lots of good information that could have been lost otherwise. Let's listen to just a little bit of it.
John Gilbert is the boat, daddy-o, daddy.
Just a moment ago, I mentioned finding the button from the Civil War in our root cellar area. We also have an exhibit here that pays homage to the Civil War. This exhibit tells about the river's roles during the war. In particular, I'd like to point out the photographs of the boats that you see on the right. Those are examples of the ironclads and tin-clad gunboats that you've heard about. And if you'll look closely, those boats were actually just steamboats that were given a tough outer layer to make them more resistant to artillery fire. We know we had ironclads, tin-clads, timber-clads, and there's another clad you may not have heard as much about. That was a cotton-clad boat. Sometimes the steamboats were piled up with huge bales of cotton, so only the smokestacks were visible from the top. And these big, thick bales of cotton also helped protect the boats. We're now in an exhibit called the Rain Table. This is an interactive water exhibit that tells how floods are formed. And we can't learn about the river without learning about when the river misbehaves. And that has certainly been the case many times in Paducah. The worst flood in Paducah recorded history occurred in 1937. At that time, 30,000 people in Paducah had to be evacuated. Many of the people who were here, if they had a two-story home, were able to go up to the second floor and wait to be rescued during that period of flooding. This photograph shows a family that has just crawled out the second floor window. They have gotten into the boat and now they'll be taken to safety. You'll notice that this is a Coast Guard boat. The Coast Guard helped many people get to safety during that period of time. This flood was caused by weather conditions on the northern part of the river. Up near Pittsburgh, there had been many days of snow, then there had been a rainfall, and then more snow, and then with more rain. And that last round of rain melted all the snow, and it had no place to go but out the banks of the river. Paducah, Kentucky was especially hit hard, and it was many months before people were able to resume their lives. We don't expect this kind of flooding to occur again. We have taken a number of steps to keep our city safe. Of course, you've seen our beautiful flood wall outside, and the flood wall surrounds the city to keep us safe. And we also have a system of river pools with locks and dams along our river that also help us control flooding. What you're hearing now is the sound of the rain table. We've just had a storm and now we have a lot of rain coming down and we have the flood conditions happening here. You'll notice that the water is filling the smaller streams and then dumping into the bigger streams. And this shows what happens when too much water comes down upon our land. I wanted to show you a few other of our original 1937 photographs. You'll notice the one here actually has our museum building in the photograph. Here is our building when it was known as Petter's Supply. And the water at this point in this photograph has already gone down a little. You will see the signs of the flooding on the side of that wall. When the water was in this building in 1937, it was almost to the second floor. It's very hard to imagine to stand on our second floor and look out at the river and imagine that it could be right under our feet. This photograph is also of interest. This is an aerial view showing some of the flooding. This is not all the flooding. The museum building would be approximately there. This is the city of Paducah. But if we could see the entire flooding, this photograph would come out to about where I'm standing now. So you can see this only shows about half of the story. The flooding actually reached out 28 blocks into the city of Paducah. You're now looking at another one of our interactive water exhibits. This is a model of a hydroelectric dam, the kind of dam that not only holds back water to help control flooding, but a dam that also uses the power of the water to generate electricity. Across from the dam is an exhibit of mussels. This exhibit shows some of the species of mussels that live in our water. The mussels are so very important. We know that one adult mussel can filter 6 gallons of water per day. So you can see that large colonies of mussels in our river are a very good thing. and we're learning more about how to preserve our mussels. At the very end of this exhibit, we have an exhibit that tells about water quality in the river, and we also have part of the exhibit telling about dredging the river. We have a model boat on the end of our exhibit that is a model of a dredge boat. This is a boat that's working on the river, trying to keep the main channel deep enough for our large vessels. This boat has an arm that reaches down into the river, and this arm removes the excess mud, sand, and gravel. And as you can see with this model, sometimes this material is recycled. In the case of our model, the sand has been brought up and it's being put into barges, and it will be taken and used possibly in construction. Now we're at the back of our museum complex, and as the sign says, the theater is that way. We're headed to the Maiden Alley Cinema. We're now in the Maiden Alley Cinema. This cinema is part of our complex. It's a unique facility in that it is shared by several partners. The City of Paducah, Seaman's Church Institute, and the Paducah Film Society all share the cinema with the River Discovery Center. It seats approximately 150 people, and we use it to show a river film to our guests. We have a 17-minute film that we had custom made for our museum guests, and it's a very valuable part of your visit here. It will tell you a lot about the river. We're now in the lobby of the Maiden Alley Cinema. If you came here for a movie on the weekend, you would enter this area. This is the concession stand. You would get your concessions, and then you would go on into the theater where we were just a moment ago. One really wonderful thing about the lobby here at the Maiden Alley Cinema is that it allows us to have a revolving art gallery. You'll see now that we have pieces that are part of the Yeiser Arts Center permanent collection. At this particular time, their collection is being exhibited in 3 different locations: out at the community college, in the Yeiser itself, and here in the Maiden Alley Cinema lobby exhibit hall also. This is a wonderful exhibit for us to have, and it's a wonderful opportunity for teachers to bring in their school groups and have their school groups be able to see some quality art. There are exhibits hanging here pretty much the entire year. They're hung approximately 6 to 8 weeks at a time, and there's a wide variety of artists who have been exhibiting here. You'll notice this particular abstract piece is very colorful. The artist is unknown for this particular piece, but it is part of the Yeiser collection, as I mentioned. We're now at an exhibit that is a very important exhibit for us. It is an exhibit that's really twofold. The far end of the exhibit just kind of shows how materials are moved from land to the barge or vice versa. This part of the exhibit is a model of a lock and dam, and it's very important to learn about locks and dams if you're studying the river. We've talked about flooding before, and we've made reference to the dams, but I want to point out to you the purpose of the lock, explain very simply how the lock works. When a pilot approaches a dam, there's actually 2 problems for the pilot. The first one is to get around the dam, and the second problem is to go from one level of water to the other. The lock allows the boat to do this. The lock is simply a box of water with a gate on each end, and when a boat approaches the dam, it goes into the lock. The front gate is closed, and then after the boat enters the lock, the back gate closes. The water then becomes an elevator. The lockmaster can either raise or lower the water according to the level of water in front of the dam. Once that level has been reached, that front gate opens and the boat continues through the gate and on its way. The pilot really doesn't have any challenge to the different level of water because the water working as an elevator has allowed him to change levels. Now I'd like to show you a pie chart that has a lot of wonderful information presented in a very simple way. This pie chart shows all the different kinds of cargo that is transported on the river. You'll see a towboat with barges here in front of it, and in each piece of this pie, there will be a type of cargo named. These are the cargoes that you see on the river most often. You'll notice more than 1/2 of the pie chart represents coal and coke, coke being a byproduct of coal. You'll also notice in our illustrations, some of the barges are open barges and some are closed. Some are tanker barges. We have a lot of different types of barges to haul different cargo. There would be times that you would have a cargo that could be in an open barge. Being open wouldn't harm anything. That could be a barge that would transport maybe rock or sand. But then other times you'll have barges that are closed. These barges can contain cargo that could be harmed by the weather, such as grain. But you also might have a type of cargo that could be harmful to the environment. And that type of cargo, maybe petroleum or chemicals, would be shipped in a closed container. So when you're out on the river and you see the different types of barges, you can keep that in mind and just remember that closed or open sort of will depend upon what type of cargo it is. I'd like to mention at this time the economic advantage to shipping by the river. We do talk a lot about the towboat industry here and its influence on our economy. I'd like to give you a couple of statistics that pretty much tell the story. We want to talk about one unit in the tow, one barge, not the whole tow, only one barge. And I'd like to compare it to shipping by railroad or shipping by trucks on the highway. I think the statistics will surprise you. One barge can transport as much cargo as 15 jumbo railroad cars, or as much cargo as 58 trucks on the highway. And when you think about that statistic, you realize that because the barges are so large, and I might add, a great deal of the barge is below the surface of the water. So when you see them going down the river, you have to remember there's a lot of the barge underneath the water you don't see. But when you think about how much more cargo can be shipped by barge, you also have to think about the environmental impact that has too. If more cargo can be shipped at once, there's going to be less fuel used and fewer pollutants entering into our environment. We're now in the Founders Room. This is the second floor of the museum. Remember, this is where Adam Rankin and his family lived in 1843 when he was the banker downstairs. And we'd like to tell you this is 3 rooms. We won't look at all 3 today because I'm going to invite you back to do that. I'd like you to come to see the museum very soon, and I think you'll enjoy this second floor with all the antiques and the beautiful appointments. We're now in the classroom of the River Discovery Center, and we're so excited about this space. We have only had a classroom space for a few months now, and it has changed the dynamic of the field trip visit to the River Discovery Center. Now we can have classrooms come in and do special projects in our classroom. We can do art projects, science projects, have special speakers. We always want to customize your tour experience. If a teacher has special needs, they can let us know and we customize that experience. I'd like to talk just for a moment about the Adopt a Towboat program. This is the manual that teachers would use for this program. Adopt a Towboat is a program where we match up a towboat and a teacher for the entire school year. The teacher uses the manual. It has lesson plans for each month, and the teacher is able to help his or her students understand the riverboat industry, the towboat industry, how it works, what the cargoes are, what the work is like on the boat itself. This is a wonderful program. It allows the students to learn about the industry, and it allows those same students to go home, tell their parents. The parents learn about the river, and then they all come back to the museum for a nice visit. So it's a wonderful program. We've had a lot of success with Adopt a Towboat. We're now in our expanded exhibit area. I'm going to be showing you 3 exhibits. This one is called 24 Hours on the River. And this exhibit allows you to observe the river in live time. We have a camera mounted on the river on the tip of Owens Island, and you will see from our monitor the view that you will see with this exhibit. There's Owens Island. This is live time. It is 3 o'clock in the afternoon here, and I can spin backwards, and you can see the day going back to the early morning. You'll see the boats going in reverse. Our young guests particularly enjoy this. They love to go all the way back and see all the activity on the river for the last, they can spin back all the way to a week prior to this time, actually. I'm trying to get back to early morning to let you see how that looks when the monitor changes from nighttime to morning time. Okay, we're about there, 6 a.m. You can see the pretty pink clouds in the sky. We'll go on back a little bit more, and you're going to see nighttime. There we go. Now you see the lights of the boats that are on the river. It's very fun to observe the river at nighttime because with the boats lit up, it seems as if it's a little bit easier to get an idea how many boats are actually on our rivers. This is the second of our 3 new exhibits. It's called Hidden Highways, and this exhibit allows us to punch 2 different cities. I'm going to start with Chicago and New Orleans, and we're going to see the river route light up. At the same time you see the rivers filling in. They're different colors representing different rivers, Illinois River, Mississippi River. And also here on our monitor we can see the distance traveled and the change in elevation. It's a fun exhibit. We're going to have some fun now. We're in the simulator at the River Discovery Center. You'll see that I'm navigating a pleasure boat, and I'm turning the wheel here. We can have a lot of fun with it. You can notice that if I go too far to the right, we get a little seasick perhaps. We have a barge in the water we're going to have to try to avoid. Looks like I'm going to do that. Whoa! Looks like I'm going to do that okay. Here we go down the river. You'll see Paducah, Kentucky in the simulation along the side monitor. There's the Four Rivers Center. Coming up will be the River Discovery Center. You'll recognize it by its chimneys on each end with the red roof there. I better pay attention to my driving here, or to my piloting. I'm going to try to direct my boat between these 2 boats that are on the river. You'll see the I-24, or you'll see a bridge ahead. Now it's raining. We're having some difficulties with our weather. I'm going to veer to the left a little. You'll see the executive inn there on the left. As you can see, this is a lot of fun. We have several options with our boats. We have this pleasure boat. We also can navigate a towboat and a Coast Guard cutter boat. We have several scenarios on the river. We can start out in a scenario that takes us all the way under the bridge. Let's see if we can turn the boat, let's wait a minute. We'll turn the boat around in just a moment. We also have a scenario where we start off the simulation beside a boat, and that's a lot of fun. You'll notice it's just presenting a lot of the real challenges on the river. So come on down and play with our simulator. It's lots of fun. It is part of the exhibits here at the museum, so the ticket allows you to see everything you've seen today. So I hope to see you. I hope you come down and give your hand at this wheel. See if you can keep the boat going straight on the river. You can see I'm headed for that bridge. I don't believe I'll quite get there. I'm going to turn the boat around. Let's see what this does. Woo!